extremely lucrative, business. OnlyFans, drugs exploded, and this idea of what are these kind of subcultures that these characters can sort of brush up against, and I think as an audience we know that they no longer have the safety net of being able to go home to their parents' house. It's the real world. There are consequences to your actions. And I think, just looking at it in terms of a 3-act structure of, and also that 3-act structure, I link a little bit to AA. It's the first seasons, we discovered we're powerless, over our addiction. The second season came to believe that, a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And this third season, is about, surrendering, one's will to God, or however we understand God. And I like that idea of you're at the mercy at times of something greater than yourself, but there's also that belief in something greater than yourself, which I think is a very big theme. The religious sort of themes of this season kind of forces particularly young people to get outside of the kind of selfish aspects of social media, the envy, the jealousy, the kind of persona versus who you are. It allows for one to go, wow, I'm alive. I'm living in America. It's not the dark ages. We have penicillin. There's some really wonderful aspects to being alive right now. And
you want to hear a story about how me and this bitch here fell out? It's kind of long, but it's full of suspense.
A few weeks ago, I released a short video about the character of Lexi Howard from the HBO Sam Levinson series Euphoria. Season 3 was released this past April and has already stirred up a ton of discourse, as has become typical for the series and in anything made by Nepo Baby Sam Levinson. One point I made in my video that first pushed me to talk about this was this consistent sentiment I've heard from many a Euphoria fan throughout the years. I shouldn't have been surprised, since it is a common defense Euphoria fans fall back on when it comes to critique around the narrative of the series. In my video, I discussed the strange politics and the weird way Sam characterizes certain aspects of these characters' lives. Like having Rue say that a 14-year-old Maddie losing her V-card to a 40-year-old man isn't as bad as it sounds now because she was the one in control. And some people left comments explaining that we aren't meant to take Rue's narration of the series at face value. She's supposed to be an unreliable narrator and mostly reflect the way the characters whose lives she's narrating feel about their situations. I agree with a lot of this, but I think Rue's intro monologues are meant to be unreliable. It's how she and the other characters perceive their worlds, not how things are in reality. While Sam Levinson is a huge creep, Maddie having sex with adults being seen as her being in control is being told by Rue, who is not only an unreliable narrator, but also a 16-year-old girl. And Maddie was also a teen. They most likely don't see it as rape since Maddie consented to it. I would agree with that last part if that was ever implied at all in the series. So far it has not been. But this is what Euphoria fans do. This is not to say these two commenters are in fact Euphoria fans, but this is an example of the things many of them say in defense of the show. They remind me a lot of Emerald Fennell fans. Fans of these people's works are clearly in some ways slightly more insightful about whatever it is their fave director is tackling, and they mistakenly believe that said creator is thinking about their work as deeply or in the same way as them, when it's obvious with certain filmmakers like Levinson or Fennell, they are not really. No, Rue Bennett is not an unreliable narrator. She is an omniscient narrator, meaning she is all-knowing, and the narration, when she isn't talking about herself, exists simply as the voice of the show. It is not the Alexander Payne movie Election, where we watch and hear characters say one thing and then do another.
I don't blame Tracy for what happened with Dave. How could I? Dave was an adult more than twice her age. Sure, she got on my nerves once in a while, but I admired Tracy. I really did. Suddenly realized I wasn't angry at her anymore. I just felt sorry for her. I mean, when I think about my new life and all the exciting things I'm doing, and then I think about what her life must be like, probably still getting up at 5 in the morning to pursue her pathetic little dreams, it just makes me sad.
Making it transparently clear that these people's narratives are meant to be trusted. One thing about Rue is that when she is speaking about herself especially, she is being self-aware and honest. She'll do something that she knows is wrong and will point that out to us as it is happening.
I know a lot of you probably hate me right now, and I get it. If I could be a different person, I promise you, I would. Not because I want it, but because they do.
There aren't moments that make it clear we aren't supposed to trust her narration. In fact, it's extremely clear that we are. What Ruth says about each character's backstories is written as factually correct. It is written as information and context given to us through the voice of Ruth. Most importantly, it is written in a certain way for us to perceive it. We are allowed to interpret her however we want. If you feel that Maddie is the one who was justifying what happened to her in her head, okay, you can do that. But that doesn't mean my analysis is incorrect or that I'm misreading the way voiceover is presented on this show. The thing about Maddie losing her virginity at 14 to a 40-year-old man is not really mentioned again. It's not something that she seems to think about. It's not presented as something that has affected her mentally. It's not something we hear her bring up to others and try to justify. I wouldn't be surprised if Sam completely forgot he wrote that. And in fact, I'm almost 99.9% positive he did. People said this in response to my points about Cassie and McKay, her season 1 boyfriend who was unceremoniously written out in season 2, saying he couldn't understand how Cassie could have so little respect for herself, even though the show makes it pretty plain how much it views Cassie as a pathetic slut whom we should pity. Sam Levinson himself recently said that you don't usually see a beautiful woman like that be that desperate, and even described her whole "who's that doggy in the window" pet play shoot from the season 3 premiere as something we were supposed to view as depressing. What frustrates me the most about these unreliable narrator defenses is they all traffic in a similar line of other defenses, which mostly amount to "that's the point" or "it's satire." So after the second episode of season 3 aired a few weeks ago, someone on Reddit made a post about the racism against Latino characters that has become noticeably evident in season 3 and put them off so hard it made them not want to continue. It's not a super well written post and some of their points are very weird, but for the most part, they are not wrong. From the first episode, the strange attitude toward Latino characters has been quite peculiar. Peculiar but unsurprising, I suppose.
Oh shit! Hey, USA! Hey, USA! USA! USA!
Save any of the food?
Sure.
The patties?
Yeah.
What about the hot dogs?
Okay.
The macaroni?
Before we mainly had Maddie and Kat, played by Alexa Demi and Barbie Ferreira. And while Kat has her own issues in terms of writing, Maddie was always a stereotypical spicy Latina. So when the character of Angel, a stripper who works at the Silver Slipper, showed up, her performance was so expected that it didn't even clock to me instantly as yet another Latina character being written with the same two emotions, angry and sad. While also being hot, of course. Gotta make sure they stay hot. The end of season 2 saw a comically bad fight between Cassie and Maddie, with Maddie being the most violent of the two. It's just not a good look to have your Latina character being the main aggressor as this little white girl runs and cries. The optics here are not great. Like, white girls know how to fight. I've seen them fight. It is a thing that happens. When it comes to Maddie, people are ardently defensive of her portrayal. They say they knew girls in school who acted just like Maddie. I don't know if I actually give a fuck though. That was still a primary aspect of her character in a way that was meant to be played as a joke. Her anger is even sometimes described as part of why Nate would act so violently towards her. There are small moments where Maddie is afforded more complexity. She can be very soft and vulnerable and is just as sensitive and love-obsessed as Cassie. But so much of her character is tied to Nate and Cassie, who already take up so much screen time out of everyone. And thus much of her family life and interiority goes underexplored. Cassie and Nate's maid, Juana, is a full-on Family Guy character. We aren't supposed to take her seriously, and like every other Latino character who gets speaking lines, is making some kind of comment about how amazing America is and the American dream. Another very lazy theme running throughout this season. Even the character of Alamo exists inside some anti-black stereotypes of fat, dark-skinned black men being hot-headed creeps. Also, he's constantly eating along with Nazir, the loan shark whom Nate owes $1 million to. But I'm sure a Euphoria fan will just tell me that they do in fact know people who are like that. You see, I'm fat, and I eat a lot, so what do you mean? That's realistic. This is not unique to the Euphoria fan base. I could critique a scene from a movie where the only fat kid in gym class is the last one running behind everyone else. It looks like they're about to pass out in a pile of their own sweat. And someone will say, well, I'm fat and out of shape, and I do get really tired when I run, so what you gonna say to that? In the comment section under that Reddit post about the racism against its Latino characters, you see people being very defensive of the show with those exact kinds of arguments. It's realistic because, well, there are a lot of Latino women working as maids in California, and they are being exploited by their white managers, so what you gonna say to that, huh? Some even downplayed OP's complaints by pointing out how all of the characters, including the white ones, are treated terribly, so guess you can't say anything about this blatant thing that's happening in front of us. Like some of the Latino characters saying the N-word was brushed aside because it's realistic for Latino people to do that. Obviously, yes, that is true. Lots of non-black people say the N-word. However, this is a show written and directed solely by a white man. This is the same dumb argument people use with Quentin Tarantino. Just because a white man is writing something that seems realistic doesn't mean it is somehow above criticism on how he is portraying that realistic thing. This is what people say in defense of Promising Young Woman's dumb ending. It's realistic though, so you can't be angry about it. Like, yes I can, Susan. Yes I can. 13 Reasons Why depicted a lot of things that were realistic. Did they depict them well? No, they didn't. Y'all didn't just rip 13 Reasons Why a new one over that suicide scene from season 1. Y'all ripped them a second, a third, and a fourth one for that shit and more. But we all have to just shut the fuck up when it comes to the blatant racism, because that certainly makes sense in the year 2026. The kind of racism we see displayed throughout this season so far is the kind that if it came out 20 years ago, we would be pointing to as an example of outdated stereotypes of Latino people. It would be strange if people weren't complaining about this. Y'all act so horrified over the casual bigotry that would crop up in old movies and shows we grew up watching. And not enough people spoke out about it. But when it's happening in the present day, we do what those did before us. We roll our eyes, claim that people are being too sensitive, and or assert that the racist stereotypes exist for a deeper reason. For example, there's a scene in episode 2 where Cassie is using her maid Juana yet again to take naked photos of her with ice cream melting on her boobs, photos of her half dressed in a baseball gear, and dressed as a baby with her legs spread while donning a diaper. Cassie pulls out her pacifier to ask Juana if she thinks she could be doing more with her life. Juana says no, and Cassie asks, even though you're just a housekeeper? And Juana responds, no, America, my dream.
No. Even though you're just a housekeeper?
Sí, America, my dream.
Like, why is she talking like that? And why is she written to be stupid? Under that post, people said the scene was meant to be cheeky, which, yeah, obviously. There was a scene in the first episode where Ruth tells Lexi that she's thinking about getting more into religion, and Lexi says she has no interest in being friends with a Christian because they're judgmental. I didn't even really say anything about this scene, but I got comments from people saying that it was obviously meant to poke fun at Lexi, who was being judgmental throughout most of that scene. I agree, I think that was obvious. People seem to think that if something is intended to be cheeky, though, then it is also in the clear. You can't say anything about it because the intention was to poke fun at the irony of Cassie passive-aggressively diminishing her job as a housekeeper, as she is sitting there wearing a diaper and a happy baby pose with a pacifier in her mouth. You guys, Euphoria has always been offensive. Maybe 4 years later, some of you grew up or something, but this is a fictional TV show with actors agreeing to their characters' lines. The maid scene with Cassie felt like a joke, satire, or sarcasm. He was making a comment about how immigrants come all the way to America to take pics of a white girl naked is the joke. I swear this season has gone over everyone's head. The sex scene with Chloe and the Nazi shit is totally gross and not needed, but neither is Faye in this season. I think people are being extra judgy after 4 years of waiting. I get it, a lot had happened, but this is a TV show, don't sweat it too much. Also, the idol was way worser. Okay, so first of all, he was making a comment about how immigrants come all the way to America to take pics of a white girl naked is the joke? What the fuck are you talking about? Is that a thing that's happening in the real world? My friend Marty, who has been helping me get through season 3 of this atrocity, said it also just doesn't even make sense why Cassie would be employing her maid to do this. She would just be doing it herself with a tripod and a ring light. But we'll get to Cassie more later. Second point, pointing out the obvious irony of the scene does not negate the racism. A lot of things seem to go over the heads of Euphoria viewers, that is true. And it does seem the Lexi comment about Christians was one of them. But deciding that someone calling out the bigoted ways people of color are written in the show means they missed the satire or the commentary is very obnoxious. I mean, I didn't think race was the focal point. Drugs and sex, misogyny were def the theme though. there was only one maid shown, and it's SoCal. We know most maids are going to be Hispanic, realistically. Wouldn't it be too awkward if they have a white person as a maid? Angel was so lovely, and I feel like being Latina was not her main attraction. If every show is too politically correct, it'd be so annoying. Euphoria is not the show for you if you read every little detail as offensive. What the fuck is wrong with this person? I really hope this person is like 14 or something, because good fucking lord. I get where you're coming from as a Hispanic woman myself, but there's 5 black and white people depicted terribly for every 1 Hispanic person depicted. I think there's bigger fish to fry, and it's true that most housekeepers are Hispanic women, which is honestly a blessing because it gives our people a way to make income without having legal documentation. The line about Juana living her dream is supposed to be a note on how tone-deaf Cassie is, because she already has it all, and she's still desperate for more when people like Juana are just incredibly grateful to be here. I am black, and most of the Hispanics around me love the N-word. They throw it around and will dare you to tell them to stop. Does it make me uncomfortable? Yes, of course. Not sure why TV shouldn't reflect the ugly realities of our world in order to make others feel better. There are definitely Hispanic domestic workers being exploited by rich white couples in Beverly Hills, treated cruelly and made to do menial tasks like take pictures of vapid housewives in diapers. It should make us all uncomfortable. I kind of feel like that's the point, but trying to erase racism on screen because it makes us uncomfortable is another way of trying to erase racism. I don't know much about Sam Levinson or all the lore, but I do know that art should have the capacity to make us uncomfortable. Oh, Jesus Christ. Speaking of uncomfortable, in that same episode, America My Dream, the A-plot focuses on the character of Alamo and some racial tension between him and Lori and her Nazi drug dealer buddies. Alamo is a dark-skinned, fat black man who owns a strip club, sells drugs and weapons, and is also a staunch believer in the American dream. He, as the actor who plays him, has said, pulled himself up by his bootstraps and dresses and behaves like a cowboy. I guess. For context, the premiere showed one of Alamo's dancers overdosing on fentanyl when a package Rue delivered was contaminated with a small dose of the substance. Because of this, Alamo had to cover up her death and demanded Lori let him have Rue to make up for their mistake. Rue has been forced to work as a drug mule for Lori as she owes her over $40 million. Lori gets angry and calls him a fucking pig, which turns Alamo into the black dude with the question marks all over him meme.
You got to make amends. Simple concept of reparations.
How about you take your reparations and shove them up your nigger ass?
Oh, we're about to make this a race thing now. Maybe God brought us together.
I'm really happy for you, Alma.
God always puts you together with very young women.
Rue belongs to us.
You killed one of my bitches. I'm taking one of yours.
You're a real fucking pig!
The fuck you call me? You call me a pig? Oh, first it's a black thing. And that's a fucking pig thing? You calling me?
He is utterly and completely taken aback by being called a pig. It is very stupid. And I remember feeling that way the first time I watched the episode. Mind you, right before this happened, Harley, one of Lori's dealers, called Alamo the N-word. This does anger Alamo, but it is pig that seems to really get to him. Later on, we see Alamo, Bishop, and his friend G sitting in a booth at the strip club. Alamo, to Bishop's annoyance, has been talking nonstop about this pig comment from Lori. Alamo is absolutely perplexed. He just doesn't understand why she would call him that.
Fucking insult she could have took from the English language. That bitch Lori called me a motherfucking pig. Why a pig? That's $1 million question.
I wouldn't dwell on it.
Yeah, you wouldn't. You ain't the one she called a pig.
So what?
Because the bitch ain't never called me a pig before, so I'm thinking, what brought that to the tip of her tongue?
The way this is set up is as though it has hit at some specific thing from his past. We still have more to come, and while I like to say I'm sure we'll return to this, I have no idea because Sam is stupid. In an article for Variety that was released after this episode aired, both Sam Levinson and actor Adewale Akinnuoye-Agbaje, I hope I said that right, commented on this. Sam says he thought it would be interesting to play with racial dynamics.
I just thought it was interesting to play with the racial dynamics of these two crews. There's this built-in animosity. With the pig comment, it just seemed interesting as an entry point into this man's psychology. There's something about it he can't get over. He doesn't understand why she would refer to him that way. Is it about his weight? Is it because he's greedy? It opens up this insecurity in him that allows us to start to see how human he is. There are things someone could say to any one of us that may seem insignificant, but it sticks in our head. It was a way of playing with the absurdity of racial dynamics, these miscommunications that lead to greater troubles.
Okay, so What exactly does he mean by these communications that led to greater troubles? What is the miscommunication? She called him a pig, and he was more offended by that than being called a nigger. And this was something that a white man wrote and thought was interesting to play with. There is no miscommunication. There is nothing being played with here. Harley was being blatantly racist because he is racist. She called him a pig. That is a common insult that is directed usually at fat people and also at men and the police. Initially, I did wonder if that was possibly connected to why he was so offended, but considering they hired the real-life former head of the DEA from the Los Angeles Police Department to play the DEA officer in this show, I doubt the show is that anti-cop enough to even go there.
From Z, and Bill Bodner, who plays Bowman, is not an actor. He's the former head of the DEA in Los Angeles. MK, who plays Jimenez, they're just a great duo.
Like, wow, talk about choices being made. So I don't like the way Sam writes black people. I think he needs to stop. Especially when he doesn't like to work with other people because he's an egotistical hack and thinks he's so edgy and cool because he writes about marginalized people but in very stereotypical and dehumanizing ways. I don't like him writing black male characters so he can write them saying the N-word. And I don't like him. I really dislike this man. In my last video, I said that Sam Levinson, like everyone Fennell, should just direct music videos. I said I understood the initial appeal of Euphoria as someone who also loves cinematography and really enjoyed how season 1 of Euphoria used to look. But after doing a bit more research, I've come to the conclusion that Sam Levinson is not as brilliant or talented as he has been unfairly made out to be. Season 3 of Euphoria has made it very clear how much of Sam's work was improved by the contributions of marginalized people like women and people of color. And considering how much of a misogynist he is, and how much he enjoys casting black people to star in his work but never wants to collaborate with them writing-wise, means that is something we should be talking about. I also saw some comments from people saying that because he's a white man, we shouldn't be surprised. And they are completely wrong, but I am getting tired of people trying to make themselves feel smart because they weren't surprised by a white person doing white person shit. Like, yes, Susan, many of us are in fact just as pessimistic and nihilistic about white people as you are. That's never going to stop me from criticizing it when it is an insanely popular show, despite how divisive it is. Because aside from the obvious racism, the show is wildly misogynistic. It's probably one of the most misogynistic dramas I've seen on TV, and I've watched Beverly Hills 90210. After episode 3 of Euphoria aired, the episode where Nate and Cassie officially get married, an article by Roxana Hadidi reviewing the episode described it as offering some clarity on the character of Cassie Howard. When Cassie asks her ex-best friend Maddie, "Who am I?" in the second episode of this season of Euphoria, it's played for a laugh. But Sydney Sweeney delivers the line with such genuine curiosity that the question falls onto us and lingers like so much iridescent body glitter. Who is Cassie these days? She's a Gen Zer who has direct experience with how the internet can commodify and weaponize sex, but somehow didn't know anything about OnlyFans. She's an adult complaining to her fiancé that they haven't renovated various rooms in their hideous mansion and insisting that $50,000 isn't an exorbitant cost for wedding florals. But she has no grasp of their actual finances. Rue might miss high school, but Cassie is the member of this sort of friends group who seems to have regressed the most since then, clinging to the heteronormative gender rules as if they're the only things she's ever learned. So far in Euphoria's third season, she's a cipher, a character defined more by her garish costumes, sexy dog, sexy baby, sexy American flag, than by any sense of what's actually going on internally, behind what Nate calls that pretty face. The entire piece isn't bad, parts of it irritated me, but overall I think it is an interesting reading of the character of Cassie. The author notes that Cassie's unrelenting desire for wedding flowers that cost $50,000 is more about her wanting the ability to waste that much and perform that kind of wealth for those around her. As she usually does, Cassie got what she wanted, and we finally get some clarity about who she is now. A woman who doesn't actually want $50,000 to spend on flowers. What she actually wants is the ability to throw away the money on flowers and call that waste happiness. She wants a gaudy wedding not to prove that her marriage to Nate is pure, but that they're not poor. They go on to lay out the way Sam ties all the characters' desires to capitalism, with Cassie saying in the premiere that she wanted to do OnlyFans so she could make men feel good about getting a personal message from a hot woman to simply wanting to give the people what they want. In the first episode, Rue in the voiceover describes Lexi's sister Cassie as residing in a conservative right-wing bubble, another moment that does feel slightly self-aware in regards to Lexi. However, sections like these are what really turned me off a bit about this article. Throughout, the author describes Cassie as essentially a gold digger, someone who is money hungry to a selfish degree, And she's written as though she has always been this way. An uppity, privileged woman who doesn't want to live without the wealth she's become accustomed to. During the wedding reception, Nate is shocked when he sees Nas show up and place his hands on his shoulders to remind him that he owes so many people so much money. Something everyone at the table, including Cassie, overhears. From here, Cassie begins to unravel emotionally and begins drinking heavily. As Nate insists that she smile and explains that they'll have to downsize to pay Nas, Cassie reacts with all the hyperbole of a girl who since puberty has been reassured implicitly and explicitly that her body will get her everything she wants. Because here she is, squeezed into a mini dress and grinding on Nate in front of all of their friends and family. And for what? Is his "trust me, I love you" actually enough? As Nate pantomimes reeling Cassie toward him like a hooked fish, she starts acting like one, flailing around and gasping for air before she cries out, "I don't want to be poor." After the dance, Cassie gets drunk and approaches Nate, telling him that he's not a man, and that a man provides. Nate says that all he does is provide for her and tries to comfort her. But Cassie is so upset, she begins yelling at him for lying to her, and how they don't even have money for food. She opens the bottle while shaking it, and the cork unleashes and hits him right in the eye. He slams his hand on the table and walks away to put ice on it. We are led to think he's going to become violent, but he is the complete opposite. He is calm and kind and sweet to her, tells her he loves her and that she makes him want to be a better man, and hopefully one day a father. As the show decided in the first episode that it had redeemed Nick Jacobs, a hot-headed abusive asshole with serious mental health issues off screen, it also decided to villainize Cassie in turn. From the moment the two were shoved together and their lack of chemistry was shoved down our throats in season 2, the Cassie character has been written as though Sam suddenly began to harbor animosity towards Sydney Sweeney herself. You can see it just with how people talk about Cassie, like this author. In season 1, Cassie was written as a girl who developed early and was reduced to her appearance by everyone around her, and in particular her parents. Lexi, her younger sister, has always been secretly, but not so secretly, envious toward her sister for how much more attention she has received from her family. Their family, which we are told is not exactly rich. Cassie's father tried to get her into ice skating, which she did enjoy doing until the family began having money troubles, and so the encouragement for that hobby came to a complete halt. Class is not something that is delved into very much with this show, but if Cassie is meant to come from a kind of a poor family, then why are we demonizing her for wanting money? The big theme this season, as with season 1, is that of sex work. It's unclear to me what Sam is trying to say about it though. On the one hand, it feels like he wants to compare sex work to other fields in the entertainment industry that are considered more respectable. In season 3, when we catch up with Maddie, we learn that she's been kind of a social media pimp, getting girls to pose in photos that imply nudity, and when Maddie explains this to one of her clients named Caitlin, she says it's important for her to have a moral code unlike these other girls. Again, it seems self-aware. I think if the show had more writers, this commentary about sex work could have been written with a little more nuance and originality. There have been many shows and films about sex work that have more interesting things to say than this, and there have been many shows and films that depict sex work as not only immoral, but always something we are meant to view as depraved and inherently sinister. We must view sex workers as sad, pathetic people being exploited, even if, like Cassie, they have fully chosen to do this work and seem to be enjoying it. The first episode, when we catch up with Cassie, she's dressed like a dog with a shit turd tail and another baffling costume choice. Licks out of a dog bowl and uses her mouth to play with dog toys as their poor maid Juana assists in filming her. Nate comes in to chastise her like a sitcom dad and has to explain to her what prostitution is, and she acts like she doesn't understand.
Video like this online, I'm a joke.
People make money doing this.
Think about what you're saying, what you're actually saying. How much is that doggy in the window? Who's the doggy?
I'm the doggy.
Right, so you're for sale.
No.
No, but what you're saying is, you can buy me.
It's just a funny video.
Except you're not a doggy, you're a grown woman, so that makes you a what? A prostitute.
No, I am not a prostitute.
Then
Sam Levinson said of her pet play shoot in the first episode, which caught a lot of backlash, that we are meant to view this entire situation as depressing. As Cassie is doing a naked shoot in broad daylight in a suburban neighborhood where all their neighbors can see, the camera pans up her body as she is wrapped in a soaking wet American flag with her nipples poking out. As this happens, Rue says that Cassie was so desperate for attention, she was willing to humiliate herself. On the one hand, it's trying to comment on sex work in this current era and juxtaposing it with the ways we are all in a way selling ourselves. On the other hand, it wants to tie sex work to tragedy. It wants to depict those who run strip clubs as cartoonishly evil, greedy drug dealers who don't view women as human beings. It also wants to pat itself on the back for having Alamo go on a rant about the power of pussy, something that has been said before in the series and has been said better in other movies.
Yeah, I done peeped it from a young age now. I seen it. Pussy, that thing between your legs, got a mystic power. So I figured I'd stand me right by some pussy with my cash register.
In episode 4, a scene takes place between Lexi, Cassie, Maddie, Maddie's friend, and Rue. Maddie is trying to take photos of Cassie, who has just received a makeover, to help build her following, and Lexi sits nearby in front of her apartment, judging them for their abnormal behavior. Lexi says she wishes Cassie knew she was worth more than her body, to which Cassie responds, "My body's worth a lot." This is played as a joke, and when Lexi, after hearing Rue may be doing drugs again, goes off on everyone and calls them pathetic, the reef blower Maddie's friend was using for the shoot starts up again, and they promptly ignore Lexi's annoying ass. It is mocking and condemning Lexi, Cassie, and Maddie at the same time. Lexi for being a prude, Cassie for being a dumb bimbo, and Maddie for being a pimp. It's annoying because it makes perfect sense to me why Cassie would turn to sex work. I don't find that pathetic or sad. I find that to be a young woman who grew up poor and would like to make money using what she has, since what she has are things people online would absolutely want to see. And wanting financial security is a very normal and natural thing for humans to want. I said in my Lexi video that a story about a character who has been reduced to her appearance her whole life, and how that has conditioned her to feel her beauty is all that is valuable about her. It would be interesting if it wasn't written by a misogynistic creep who enjoys eroticizing Cassie's misery and putting her in situations where she is meant to, in his eyes, humiliate herself. Or if it wasn't written by a misogynistic idiot who clearly hates this type of woman. Going back to the comment about pussy power, the way Sam writes about sex work is as though women themselves have a particular kind of power because of how much their bodies are worth. When it comes to Cassie, she knows how much power she has, or at least she does now. "You don't know how much power you have," Nate told her in that episode, but years later, Cassie understands. Cassie's obsession with gaining the approval of men and the financial way in which men demonstrate that approval feels like the most multifaceted thing about her. It's frustrating that Euphoria is applying versions of this framing to Jules, Maddie, and Rue, who like the only way it knows how to give female characters interiority is through adjacency to sex work. But for Cassie, her OnlyFans turn in wailing exclamation that she refuses to be poor, are the long gestating payoff to incremental character development that blossoms into a bouquet of significance in the Ballad of Paladin. For Cassie, love is now secondary to abundance, and as crassly greedy as her character has become, at least it's a kind of growth. Conflating the profitability of pussy with the supposed power women have because they have pussies is some incel manosphere shit, and I don't like that.
It's like they feel like part of their job is kind of to be like a therapist in some ways, you know, like they are there to like provide company and stuff. And I'm like, can we explore that part of Jules then? That is Jules that kind of person? That I don't know. Sam Levinson's idea of what sex work is so fucking limited. He does not seem to respect those women, period, as human beings, as people with agency. He wants to shame them for what they're doing, but he also wants to stare at them while they're doing it. And with this in particular, I'm like, how the fuck did Jules even get into this position where she could be such a high-earning sugar baby so quickly? Like, how? This is a thing that I think men in particular really think, that they're like, oh, women can make money so easily. All they have to do is become a sugar baby. All they have to do is become like a sex worker or something, and then suddenly they'll be like a millionaire. It's like, well, that's not how that works. Most women who do sex work are still they're earning like a similar amount of money that they would earn somewhere else. So maybe some of them will be really successful at it and they'll make more money, but for the most part, it's just a fucking job like anything else. But he has this fantasy of like, oh, as soon as you become a sugar baby, you're making thousands of dollars. You've got a penthouse apartment. Like, oh, it's that easy. If anything, that in itself is like weird propaganda for girls to see, and they'll be like, oh, really? I just have to go on dates with weird guys and then I just make all of the money? Not realizing that it's way harder than that. And that also, again, it's a choice that you make based on like the skills that you have, based on like if that is a fit for you as a potential job. He doesn't take it seriously at all. It's annoying.
We will return to the sex work stuff a little bit later though. Nate carries Cassie over the threshold, but when they enter their ugly ass mansion, Nate is once again weirdly shocked about this thing he was warned multiple times would happen. Nas and one of his men are waiting for them, and after they cut on the lights, Nas sits on the couch eating pie as the other man begins beating Nate to a pulp. Cassie tries to interject and is pushed away, and her head slams into the ground, causing her nose to bleed. She begins to cry and sob about her nose bleeding and her wedding night being ruined as Nate is brutally attacked just behind her.
He doesn't want to listen to reason.
He doesn't ever want to listen. It's very obvious what we are meant to take away from this moment. Cassie, a spoiled, I guess a rich girl now, is selfishly whining about her day being ruined as poor Nate gets his ass beat. After finishing his pie, Nas gets up and snips off Nate's toe. Blood gushes from his foot as they leave. In an article for IndieWire that interviewed Levinson, he spoke about how they had to reshoot the ending of episode 4 and decided the scene should be representative of the psychology of Cassie and Nate's relationship.
We started to talk about it. How do we make this rooted in the psychology of Nate and Cassie? And suddenly it started to make sense, said Levinson. If we're playing this on Cassie, what would her response be to Nate getting the crap beaten out of him? Well, she would start going, "This is my wedding. How could this happen to me?" said Levinson. We started to block it that way, and it was that second night that we really discovered, oh no, this is the scene is rooted in Cassie's psychology and her narcissism, as her husband is just getting the shit kicked out of him up and down the stairs.
When it comes to Cassie, most of the hatred that has been aimed at her by the fandom stems from both Sydney Sweeney the actress and the events that occurred in season 2. Cassie began secretly sleeping with Nate, Maddie's longtime on and off again boyfriend, whom she was in love with or at least infatuated with, despite the relationship being very toxic and abusive. Eventually, Maddie found out, which put a huge rift between the two, who were presented in season 1 as being pretty close. Throughout season 2, we watch Cassie desperately yearning for Nate, a man who in season 1 looked down on her because of her promiscuous reputation. Nate, we were told, loved Maddie specifically because she told him she was a virgin. We also see Nate slut-shame her on multiple occasions, and we hear Maddie cry about how this makes her feel. But in season 2, he's suddenly into Cassie, and the show dedicates more time to portraying Cassie as a desperate slut who would betray her own best friend for the attention of a man than it does unpacking Nate's psychology as an abusive and violent person. Nate even has the nerve to judge Cassie for betraying Maddie, as he is also betraying her.
Are you ever gonna look Maddie in the eye again?
And Cassie's emotional breakdowns are shown as being more unhinged than Nate's anger and abuse. If this were realistic, since Euphoria fans want to defend everything with a realism take, Nate would be even more abusive toward Cassie. He would be even more slut-shaming. The YouTuber Misogyny said this on one of her live streams where she's been covering the season, but Nate would absolutely be Andrew Tate in this situation. He would be a part of the OnlyFans thing and would get off on controlling his wife and her body. Instead, what we get is a sympathetic portrait of a man trying his damnedest to give Cassie what she wants. Him being in debt because of some construction deal gone wrong over some endangered flowers, and ultimately paying $50,000 for the flowers is a sign of how much he's changed and how much he truly loves Cassie. So Cassie crying as her nose is bleeding is meant to make us laugh at her pain and be annoyed by her self-absorption. Ian Maud Apatow, who plays Lexi, said Lexi's frustration with Cassie is due to Cassie's selfish behavior, even though Cassie never really did anything wrong to Lexi, who can be extremely rude towards Cassie for no fucking reason.
Did you lose weight? Do I look different?
Do I look different? I was just wondering. Then why would you ask?
I was just curious. Why are you so judgmental?
Why are you so judgmental? I wasn't judging you. You sit on your bed all day just waiting to criticize me. That's not true.
Did you lose weight? Are you depressed? Why haven't you cleaned your room?
Did you ever think about Dad? What happened with McKay? Where were you last night?
Just shut the fuck up, Grace! Shut the fuck up, Lexi! Fine, I'll stop caring. You're making me feel like I'm going crazy. Like I'm actually fucking crazy.
He even discouraged her from doing OnlyFans and said that he had money and she didn't need to try and make any of her own.
You don't need to worry about money. I've got money.
This was something she wanted to do so she could pay for her own flowers. See, this is also supposed to be the pathetic part. She's doing all this shit to embarrass herself for flowers that are gonna die very soon after the wedding is over. Is $50,000 for wedding flowers a little insane? Maybe. But it's odd to shame her for that when Nate is the one in the wrong here. Not only did he lie, but he could have put her and her family in danger. Naz just showed up to the wedding. He could have harmed the other guests out of retaliation. Somehow her crying as this insane shit is occurring around her and her nose is bleeding and her head is probably pounding is portrayed as her just being an annoying bratty crybaby and not her being understandably upset at this very scary situation that Nate put them in. Like, why would you even bring her home? Everyone on the show no longer has brain cells because Nate thought it was a smart idea to return home where Naz knows where he lives with his new bride and also looks like the black dude covered in question marks meme. I also hate how much this article and others like it are emphasizing Cassie's greed as if Nate borrowing money from a loan shark and throwing this lavishly hideous wedding when he knows he's deep in debt has nothing to do with him also wanting to perform wealth for his rich friends and to Cassie. Because regardless of how you feel about her a man provides line, that is something the Nate we knew would have also wholeheartedly believed in. At this moment, Cassie is being painted as an ungrateful brat, asserting that he doesn't provide as she's currently at this expensive wedding reception he paid for. Again, this truly began in season 2. Even with the fight at the end between Cassie and Maddie, Cassie's betrayal is treated with much more judgment and scorn than anything Nate has done. Cassie Howard is not someone who has ever been written very well in my opinion. She was full of sexist tropes, and the trajectory of her character, while incredibly irritating, is not shocking to me at all. It was just mostly upsetting when you consider how much more human-like she seemed in season 1. There's also the character of Jules Vaughn, a trans woman who was abandoned at a mental facility by her mother when she was a child, and lived with her very supportive father in the first 2 seasons. Jules has a tendency to hook up with men she met online and on dating apps. One of these men happens to be Nate's closeted father, Cal Jacobs, which Nate finds out about because his dad also enjoyed secretly recording these encounters he's had with many young queer and trans people. Jules and Rue meet when Jules goes off on a drunk and angry Nate during a party. Rue becomes infatuated with Jules and she becomes another drug for her. In turn, Jules falls for Rue while simultaneously falling for a guy named Shy Guy 118 on some dating app. The show is very vague about the social media sites these teens actually use. This guy is actually Nate, who pretends to be interested in her in order to get her to send him nudes so that he can use them to silence her by threatening to report her for distributing child pornography. This is a part of why so many people love to hate Nate. He was cruel and absolutely infuriating. He was also a man struggling with his sexuality and his anxiety about being around other naked men out of fear of even seeming to engage in the same acts his father did. Jules represented something to Nate. She disrupted his perception of the world and how he perceived gender. However, in season 2, the show tries to reconcile things between them by having Nate report his father to the police and return the tape Cal took of them to her. He also reveals that he meant every word. It has been theorized that Nate and Jules might end up together by the end of season 3. I'm not sure how popular that theory is, but knowing Sam, I wouldn't be surprised.
Jules must be going to this wedding for a reason. Part of it's curiosity, part of it's Rue. But I think she wanted to see Nate.
Shut the fuck up, bitch. Ain't nobody talking to you.
As with Cassie to an extent, Jules is reduced to her body and to her transness, and her insecurities center around her obsession with how men perceive her. This is something that is actually explored in a much more insightful way in a special that was released a year before season 2 of Euphoria aired. We watched Jules in a therapy session discussing her relationship to femininity and wanting to center men less in her life.
I feel like I've framed my entire womanhood around men. When, like, in reality, I'm no longer interested in men. Like, what men want is so boring and simple and not creative, and, like, I look at myself and I'm like, how the fuck did I spend my entire life building this, like my body and my personality and, like, my soul around what I think men desire.
We heard her talk candidly about her love for Rue and the deep insecurities she had around whether Rue actually loved her back. It's such a well-written and beautifully made episode. It is unsurprising it's one of the only Euphoria episodes not written by Sam Levinson, but by Hunter Schafer. It is one of the only episodes that offers Jules so much depth and complexity. And watching it for the first time recently with a friend almost made me angry because I know how things went for her in season 2. The fixation on Jules' body was turned up to an 11, and she continued to interact with men who had fetishes for trans people. In an article for Inc. magazine by Naomi Lilac Gordon, She critiqued the framing of Jules through a scene in season 2 where Jules is dared to pee in the middle of the street. There are 2 readings of this scene. The first is that it's a joke. We watch her peeve or Rue and Elliot laugh and shout out, "Wow," when a car comes in her direction. She turns back to Rue and Elliot, not wanting to flash an unsuspecting stranger, and the 2 of them are presumably greeted with the sight of her still urinating genitals, as Elliot shouts out, "Not on the car." This will be a joke where the punchline is a trans woman's biology. The punchline is the fact that Jules, a girl, has a penis. Of course, it's only furthered by the gawking and chuckling of 2 cis characters as they watch her do this. The second reading of the scene is that it's fetishization. All too frequently, trans women are made the sexual object of cis men's desire, and every episode of Euphoria is written and directed by Sam Levinson, a cis man. In season 1, the gaze directed at Jules was described by many as trans amorous. It's hard not to fall in love with Jules when watching the show. However, this was anything but. As the season is much darker, the view towards her is much darker, and it comes off less like a trans amorous gaze and more like a sick fascination with Jules's anatomy. The specific fetish towards trans women is not new. Trans women are fetishized by cishet men not infrequently, and men being turned on by the fact that we can pee standing up is all too common. Seeing a scene like that in this show made me feel gross. Watching it made my skin crawl. Not because I think trans women should be ashamed of their anatomy, or because there isn't humor to be found in the trans experience, but because the fact that this was written, made it into the final cut of the script, acted and filmed, and still found its way into the final cut of the episode. It feels like someone behind the scenes is getting off on it. The characters he enjoys hypersexualizing and fetishizing are the characters who are treated with the least dignity. They are the ones who are reduced to their bodies, as with Jules. And Cassie. The character of Kat was probably done the dirtiest next to Cassie. Many people resonated with Kat because even though she did contain some sad fat person tropes, she was a bit more layered than what we usually get with fat characters. Something Harkeisha Kent noted in an episode of the Bechdel was how happy it made her that we finally got a bad fat friend. It's just not something you see very often. Fat women are almost always just the fat best friend, there to be a shoulder to cry on for their skinny friends. I briefly critiqued this with the character of Paula from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and people have come in to defend it, saying that Paula is a more well-written character who does have a sex life and is considered desirable. Which is true. That doesn't negate the fact that she is still quite literally treated like Rebecca's mother in season 1. The show makes a joke about it several times.
The least you can do is be honest with your mother. Friend.
The thing about Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, though, is that it fixes its mistakes. Season 2 was not the greatest season of the series, but the storyline between Rebecca and Paula was actually really interesting. Paula was finally setting boundaries and putting her foot down over Rebecca's self-absorbed attitude and how much their friendship revolves around her and her toxic dating life. That's something you almost never see fat women characters get the opportunity to do.
Admit it. Our relationship has always been one-sided. I give, you take, and that is how it works.
That's not fair. That's not fair. That hurts me.
You've never been there for me when I need you.
Yes, I have been. Just the other day, I came to your house when you were sick with the flu or whatever. You didn't tell me what it was.
An abortion.
And so, yeah, I kind of liked that Kat was mean. I didn't think it was right, but it was an improvement because it did at least feel intentional for her arc. The problem is that Kat is another female character whose deep insecurities drive her to do sex work in order to make money and boost her own confidence over being wanted by pathetic old men, and others who she enjoys using and treating as conquests. When season 2 aired, it was revealed that Kat's screen time had been cut down significantly, and her character was all but written out of the show due to disagreements between Barbie and Sam. Barbie said she felt the direction he was going with Kat felt very stereotypical of fat characters, and since Sam is apparently an absolute nightmare to work with, Barbie decided to leave the series. The sad thing about Kat is that there were elements of her backstory that I related to, and even the way her sex life is depicted felt familiar as someone who has been much larger. Dating as a fat woman sucks ass, and some of the stuff Kate was doing wasn't completely unfathomable or unrealistic to me. But she is still yet another fat character whose fatness isn't great in all of her storylines. She is yet another sad fat lady who was envious of women thinner than her, and this is portrayed as something that is her fault, and not the fault of the world for making her feel that way about herself. I think them people should maybe step back from trying to write fat characters for a while. Some of the stuff Kat would say felt like something written by someone who has never been fat. There's a scene where she says, "I spent my whole life being afraid people would find out I was fat," which doesn't make any sense. What do you mean by find out? It's an even dumber version of the trope of fat people not knowing they're fat. And then the way he wrote her out felt so mean, as if he was saying fuck you to Barbie for disagreeing with how he wanted to write her. He has Kat despising her healthy relationship with Ethan because she's so insecure and so unused to nice men being interested in her that she can't appreciate what she has or some dumb shit. She hardly gets any scenes that take up that much space in season 2, and her last big moment is between her and Ethan, where she pretends to have some kind of illness to get him to break up with her. We barely even see much of her relationship with Ethan before this to even feel emotionally impacted by this. She ends up being what Barbie says she didn't want, the fat best friend. She is glued to Maddie's side for the majority of her scenes and exists mostly as a support system. Another unceremonious send-off of a really interesting character who deserved a better writer. Rue Bennett, one of Sam's self-inserts, is the best written character in the series. In a Rue special episode, we watch a long conversation between her and Ali, a recovering addict who tries to support Rue in helping her to stay clean. They have a conversation about addiction, about religion, forgiving herself, and even depression. One of the best written parts of Rue is her depression and self-hatred. When she tells Ali that she doesn't plan on being here very long, it hit me in my gut. One of the most relatable things I've ever heard a character say.
The world's just really fucking ugly, you know? It's really fucking ugly, and everybody seems to be okay with it, you know?
Rue being played by Zendaya, an incredible actress, is not something that should be understated. She carries the show and is the reason why so many of us root for her, even when she continues to fuck up. Sam is the most empathetic towards Rue, as she not only struggles with addiction, something Sam has struggled with himself in the past, but she is also attracted to women. And this fact about Rue becomes pronounced in season 3, where Rue's attraction toward women comes out as resembling that of a horny teenage boy who just found his dad's Playboy magazine under his bed. This was something my friend Marty said when we watched the episode, and it stuck with me ever since because that is exactly how she acts. Knowing how much of Sam himself is in her and how much he enjoys objectifying women, this feels too close for comfort. While Zendaya is acting in season 3 like she is absolutely ready to be done with this shit show, she is the only character who still feels familiar to her season 1 self. Because like I said, he actually respects her and mostly sees her as a human being. Can't say the same for every other woman. Although I stand by most of what I said about Lexi in that previous video, I do see now how much Sam is also making Lexi the butt of the joke almost as much as he is with Cassie. It also makes the amount of people who sincerely defend her and relate to her kind of strange because they don't seem to understand that Lexi embodies the SJW trope that is almost a staple of most teen shows. In a New York Times piece from April of this year, Sam Levinson was interviewed about the upcoming premiere of season 3 of Euphoria, where he spoke about the loss of Angus Cloud, who played Fez in the first 2 seasons, the birth of a new baby, and the chaotic filming schedule and unexpected setbacks that occurred during the filming of seasons 2 and 3. Levinson elaborated on the current season's themes of good and evil, freedom, and how your actions have consequences. Midway through the article, he was asked about what his vision for season 3 was at the end of season 2.
What did season 3 look like in your brain at the end of season 2?
I've written every season like it's the last season, because I was never sure if they were going to pick it up again, so I didn't get too far into the weeds. I knew I just needed a little bit of downtime, and then like 4 or 5 days after the 8th episode aired, we started on The Idol.
What did you take from that experience?
I loved making it. I think it's hysterical, and I'm really proud of it.
It's the show you wanted to make?
I'm proud of the show we made together, and I think it'll age really well. I mean, it certainly caused a little bit of agita in my life, but there was a lot that I learned just personally as a human being.
Like what?
I had a call from Ari Emanuel at one point, and he said, "You're so lucky." I said, "Really? I don't feel lucky." He said, "How often do you get to learn who your real friends are?"
For those who aren't totally in the know, in 2023, the show The Idol premiered on HBO to horrendous reviews. The show, which was seemingly about a pop star being exploited in the music industry and being abused by her boyfriend, played terribly by The Weeknd, was dragged from head to toe for its god-awful writing and its uncomfortably gratuitous sex scenes. It came out that a woman named Amy Seimetz was set to direct all episodes of The Idol, which was supposed to be about a pop star who becomes romantically involved with a club owner who might be leading a cult. The original 6-episode series was meant to explore exploitation in the music industry and a young woman exploring her sexuality. It was to star Lily Rose Depp as the pop star and The Weeknd as her romantic interest. Over $50 million was put into the making of Seimetz's series. Nearly 100% of it had been shot and edited. It isn't until Abel Tesfaye, The Weeknd, expressed disdain for the show's focus on the female perspective. And because we live in patriarchal hell where a man can just say, I don't like that, and HBO is willing to just throw away millions of dollars so that 2 men can come in and turn this woman's vision into what a production member infamously dubbed sexual torture porn. I'm not going to go too much into The Idol because I plan on discussing that more in another video, but I bring this up because Sam saying he thought the show was hysterical feels like him trying to be a disgusting troll. And on top of that, him saying he thinks it'll age well kind of cements that theory for me. Most of the series is us watching a woman being abused by a man and telling him how much she enjoys it. According to the explosive Rolling Stone article, which came out a few months before it aired on HBO in 2023, a scene that was scrapped had Tess-Faye's character Tedros bashing in Depp's character Jocelyn's face and her begging him to beat her more, as Tedros' dick is hard. It's really gross. And then to refer to that as hysterical is even grosser. Due to the reshoots, rewrites, and even recasts, there were many people who shot and recorded scenes for the show that will never see the light of day because they were scrapped by Sam and Abel. Photos from the original version of The Idol leaked, which only furthered the utter and complete disappointment in what could have been. I think Sam knows this, and deep down it guts him how much he ruined what could have been a really groundbreaking series. Sam essentially turned The Idol into a somehow even more hypersexual version of Euphoria. It did what he relishes doing, putting conventionally attractive blonde white women in fucked up situations. On that note, let's talk about the 4th episode of season 3, titled Kitty Likes to Dance. In the episode, we begin with Rue being caught by the DEA and forced to wear a wire while working for Alamo. A new dancer named Kitty has begun working at the club, replacing Angel, who was sent to rehab in episode 2. Alamo and Eddie are aware that Kitty from Kansas cannot dance, but that she has a nice, classic ass, as Alamo says. It is implied here that this is why they hire her. Not because she can dance, but because male patrons will want to have sex with her. Meanwhile, Maddie is trying to help Cassie build her platform. So she gives her a makeover, if you can even call it that. She just has her dye her hair back to a brighter blonde, and the two attend some influencer party where Maddie advises her to flirt with this guy who can help her a massive following. As this is happening, we watch Kitty, who has hardly spoken, and actually says her first line in the scene where she is in the back room with several white men drinking champagne. She snorts ketamine and asks them what they would like. In between this and Cassie at the party trying to get everyone's eyes on her, we watch Kitty being sexually assaulted by the men who at one point violate her with a champagne bottle. It is thankfully very short, but it's still chilling. Rue catches this on the security cam and looks horrified as she watches what they do to her. Later, Rue approaches her in the bathroom. Now Kitty looks mostly the same, but with mascara running down her face. Rue asks if she's okay and if she wants to be doing this. And again, Kitty doesn't say much, other than, "I like to dance." As I said earlier, Sam is obsessed with tying sex work to tragedy. And while it is true that these kinds of incidents can and do occur in these places, Kitty as a character is almost voiceless. Marty, my friend I keep bringing up, noted how even after the assault, she is still meant to maintain her attractiveness. She's still very pretty, but with just a little bit of mascara running down her cheeks. Sam does this with Cassie all the time. He loves seeing her crying and looking pathetic. In a piece for The Independent written after this episode came out, the author criticized the way Sam wrote in a rape scene as part of a hollow plot device. Among this manosphere filtered muck, it makes sense that Euphoria's writer and creator Sam Levinson would throw in a rape scene. It all unfolds in the club. New recruit from Kansas, Kitty is taken into one of the private rooms with a group of men. "What would you like?" she asks, smiling blankly. The next time we see Kitty, she is bent over, her face writhing in pain as the men take turns having sex with her. Some viewers have expressed doubt over whether this scene constitutes assault. Perhaps they miss the fact that Kitty is on drugs and therefore unable to consent. The may have also missed the look on her face while the brutal attack is happening. One of sheer terror and paralysis that will be familiar to anyone who has ever been raped. I will admit I was one of those people who misread the scene at first, but upon a few rewatches, it is very clear what's happening. In some ways, I do understand why some would be confused because Sam has a tendency to be very vague in some of his intentions and will say in interviews how it's up to the audience on how to interpret certain scenes. And people's failure to interpret something doesn't mean that it's solely the creator's fault. But sometimes it does mean that. This assault scene is contiguous with the influencer party. This is deliberate. This is Sam once again making a point about the different ways in which we sell ourselves and how much control one can have in each of these situations. Cassie is in control, even though she also does coke and gets high. She is able to accomplish the goal Maddie set for her, which was to tempt the influencer dude with pussy, but not to give him any. And what is a strip club if not a place where people are in a way tempted with pussy that they cannot have? At least that's what it seems like Sam is trying to say. Poor Kitty is unable to resist what is going to happen to her. Eddie, who works in the office, knows what is happening and doesn't care. I'm hopeful we'll get more from Kitty later this season, but even if we do, that will not erase how poorly she was treated in this episode. Why can't we hear her speak? Why does she almost only exist to be the embodiment of the horrors of sex work? She's almost just an avatar for a sad sex worker being sex trafficked instead of a human being. You could say Sam is sympathizing with sex workers, but I don't know if he is. As with The Idol, he enjoys putting beautiful women in situations where they are being degraded and abused. The way he writes them reminds me of a scene in the first episode of Good Girls where Christina Hendricks' character finds out that her husband is cheating on her with a young blonde secretary, and she approaches her and says something so incredibly swerfy and sexist that it has lived rent-free in my head ever since the show aired. In case this gets claimed, she tells her that people in the industry would look at a woman like her, the dumb, the insecure, the self-hating, and say, perfect for porn.
What's that? I do want to warn you about something, though. What's that? Those folks out there, they take one look at a person like you, the pretty, the dumb, the self-hating, and they figure, perfect for porn.
Good Girls was a great show, but it had some weird politics. I think the part of the New York Times article that put the motivation for this video into overdrive was when he was asked about how he handles the online criticism his shows have received.
How much are you engaged with the online chatter?
Very little, because ultimately I care about the work and I love my family, and that's what gives me the most joy in life. Sure, Jan.
Some seem to think they're real people and that you're doing wrong by them.
Right, that I'm hurting these characters. Why can't they just be happy? Why can't wonderful things happen to them? Because it's anti-dramatic, first of all. The one thing that I love doing when the show airs is watching it live. I sit with a group of friends and my family and just look at the tweets. It's the funniest expletive I've ever seen. We just show each other the meanest, cruelest tweets about it. So we get a kick out of it, and then I move on with my life and never watch the episode again or think about it. But I'm very grateful for how invested people are in the show, and I wouldn't trade that for anything, even if they're angry at me.
You sure about that?
So, where to begin? First off, Sammy, honey, if you think you're doing a stellar job of pretending like you don't care about the criticism, I have some really bad news for you. You're not exactly subtle. You wrote a whole movie where you inserted yourself into the character of a black male director pissed about some white feminist critic who gave his work a scathing review. You wrote a whole storyline in season 2 where a character wrote a play about the characters in the show so you could mock the viewers of Euphoria. Second of all, this sentiment that people just want the characters to be happy feels very reminiscent of another comment that was under that Reddit post about the racism against Latino characters. You guys complain about anything, bro. It's a controversial show. If you are too sensitive, don't watch it. It annoys me so much. Like, finally we have a TV show that actually shows things in that world as they are. But no, you guys want sunshine and rainbows. Criticizing the show for being bigoted does not mean you want everything to be sunshine and rainbows. People love to make this leap over any sort of criticism. It's this very all or nothing attitude. Fans of the show don't want anyone to interrogate it. We should just accept it at face value in the way they do. The fact that Sam seems to think along the same lines says a lot. To quote my friend, if you can't ask why about a thing you enjoy, then maybe your love for that thing is shallow. Plus, the interviewer saying they seem to think they're real people is also childish on their part. People do sometimes treat fictional characters like they're real, but that's not what's at the heart of the criticisms against Euphoria and Sam Levinson himself, and it's willfully obtuse to try and pretend like it is. Third, him admitting to never watching his show after they air and never thinking about them is, again, hilarious. It's almost like he's trying to be an ass. I mean, it would explain why you can't seem to remember how you wrote anything in the previous seasons of Euphoria every time a new one comes out. On to my fourth and main point, this comment about the show being anti-dramatic. Now, if you just heard me describe season 3 episode 4 where a stripper is gang raped in the back room of a strip club, would you describe that plot as anti-dramatic? I got a comment from someone saying the show is meant to just be cheap drama and shouldn't be taken seriously. This is also something you can see all over the comment section of that Reddit post. It's true there has always been humor inserted into Euphoria. Season 1 did a much better job of balancing those two things. Season 2 and 3 do not, and especially 3. Some characters like Rue are treated with a little bit more seriousness when it comes to her addiction, but other characters aren't. Lexi and Cassie's father was addicted to drugs, and this is a part of why he ended up leaving his family. He is portrayed more sympathetically than their mother Suze, who is a full-on joke like Cassie. Suze is a stereotypical single mom who is an alcoholic and would rather be friends with her daughters than be their actual parent. Although the show hasn't explicitly said it just yet, it does view Suze as part of the reason Cassie is such an insecure slut. Ali, Rue's friend I talked about earlier, was also abusive towards his family when he wasn't sober, and the empathy he is afforded is like nothing you would see with Cassie's mom. So when Sam says the show is anti-dramatic, does he only mean with Cassie and her family? Because the gang rape scene in the show feels very serious, and that's something I would find hysterical. Episode 5 of Season 2, where Rue completely hits rock bottom with her drug addiction, is handled with complete seriousness, with small moments of humor inserted much more thoughtfully than it is in Season 3. Euphoria is not anti-dramatic. There are some aspects of satire, but it is a show that has received praise for its gritty realness and the way it tackles dark topics like substance abuse. You can't just pick and choose when the show is serious and when it isn't. You cannot write in a graphic rape scene or scenes of women being choked by their male partners and then mock the viewers for taking that too seriously. Euphoria sucks ultimately because Sam was never what made Euphoria great to begin with. It was great because of Labyrinth's music, which gave the show its unique sound. Labyrinth, another marginalized person who improved Sam's work and also has no interest in working with him again. It was great because of Petra Collins, whose cinematic style Sam and HBO stole after firing her from the show, but using her work for the series anyway. And lastly, the show was great because of the actors. Zendaya is what makes Rue an interesting character that we want to root for. It was Hunter who wrote an episode about Jules that served as one of the few moments in the series where we got to pull back the layers on her. It's unfortunate how much men like Sam get all the praise for the work of so many marginalized people who actually have a creative bone in their body. I don't think Sam actually gets a kick out of how much people hate him and this show. I think it really eats at him. And I will not be surprised if in a few years he comes out with another Malcolm and Marie type of film where he can air out all his frustrations yet again in another badly written project. In the beginning, it did seem like what Sam was trying to do with Euphoria was sincere and intriguing. But now all he does, as he did with The Idol, is make another self-referential show where he can vent out his anger at his critics. The opening scene of the first episode of The Idol is a perfect example of this. It is centered around the intimacy coach who is on set for some sexy photo shoot with Jocelyn. The coach is being portrayed as a hindrance to Jocelyn in her bodily autonomy when really he is there for her protection. But Sam is making it as though intimacy coordinators are just ruler-whacking prudes trying to police a woman's body. And so they literally have one of the characters lock him in a closet so Jocelyn could get naked as much as she wanted, I guess.
Not in the general, human rights structure of it all.
I need to get off the phone. It's an emergency.
What?
It's an emergency. I need you over here.
You realize how fucking annoying and insane that sounds?
It's actually very progressive. It's to make sure she doesn't feel pressured. I don't feel pressured. Fully respect that.
This is her album cover.
It's also my boob and my house.
Fully respect body autonomy.
Knowing that the original series was possibly meant to have some feminist commentary on exploitation in the entertainment industry, this feels particularly mean-spirited and indicative of who Sam is. It's like they were trying to mock what Amy's original version of the show was. People's shows have been stolen or taken down or unaired. This is a thing that happens and it's always fucked up. But the Idol thing feels unique in some ways. It feels uniquely misogynistic and vindictive and gross. I suppose Amy can be comforted by the fact that no one liked it. It sucks because I actually don't have a problem with the show's sole focus being about sex. I think people have a tendency to regard any piece of media that heavily features nudity and sex as part of the plot as porn, as if pornography or any story that focuses on sex is not real art worthy of any respect. I don't agree with that, and I would love to see more stories about women who do have dark sexual fantasies. But I would prefer if they were written by people who actually like women, because then we could get a more nuanced depiction than just some cis man's rape fantasy. The way Sam writes about sex in relation to women and teenage girls feels so misguided. There's a part in season 1 where Rue is giving us Maddie's backstory and talks about how Maddie pretended to be a virgin when she started dating Nate and would be submissive to him during sex, because it's what made him feel like a man. And Maddie knew that making a man feel like a man means he'll do anything for you. And that's just not inherently true. There is some truth, I suppose, but the idea that men will treat you better if you make them feel good during sex feels like something a man who has never really spoken to women who have sex with men about their sex lives and what it's like to date men would think. Again, it's not full on, but it has some manosphere vibes to me. Like a lot of creepy men who are deeply attracted to young women and underage girls, they have a fixation on their vanity, their insecurities, and their desire for male attention. It's not something he's trying to extend empathy for. It's something he gets off on. A beautiful, naive woman with low self-worth and daddy issues, which just so happens to cause said broken woman to be obsessed with men and male approval, is a very common story trope that has been both written by men and women. Women also play into these tropes in a way that also isn't particularly nuanced, but cis men who are attracted to women love this kind of woman. Towards the end of season 2, there's a scene of Cassie telling Nate all the ways that he can control her.
You can control what I wear, what I eat, who I talk to.
Again, this is something that someone could ask for from their partner in a kink sort of way. I do not judge people who have that kink, but we have to keep in mind how Cassie is written. This is not a confident woman with a healthy relationship to sex. This is an insecure woman who craves attention from men so much it nearly destroys her when they won't call her back.
As soon as Nate had been released from the hospital, he wished he was back in the hospital.
Just take a deep breath.
Nate, I'm legit going crazy right now. You can't do this to me.
Her telling Nate this isn't supposed to be perceived as positive kink representation. When you take in the factor of how much Cassie has changed and how clear it is that Sam holds some deep resentment towards Cassie and what she represents, it also feels familiar to how these kinds of men see teenage girls and young women. They hate them, but they still want to fuck them. There's a part in one of Lolita Sebastian's videos where she talked about Lolita and the sexualization of young girls in real life and in the media. She says something along the lines of the fact that being a teenage girl can be so difficult because everyone hates you, but there are still grown adults who are willing to have sexual relationships with you. A woman being naive and vulnerable is part of the appeal. Like, you have these gross men in the Epstein files talking about how insecure and self-conscious young girls are. It's something women get so much shit for as if it isn't something that we all care about. It sucks that Sam ruined not one but two shows that were meant to center around women and femmes, but came to center Sam and his gaze above all else. Sam Levinson is weird. He's a weirdo. While the Special Rue episode had much more nuanced things to say about religion and forgiveness, seasons 2 and 3 are giving me anxiety about the conservative anti-sex work themes cropping up this season. Sam said in an article for The Hollywood Reporter that he wanted to tell a story about people surrendering to God. I know not all Christians are prudish and weird about sex, but Sam clearly is. Him being Christian actually does explain a lot of why he is so weird about sex. Dude clearly has some shit he needs to unpack. Saying these characters can choose what life they want and that there are consequences to those actions feels very right-wing and less empathetic towards people who have struggled with addiction. In my last Euphoria video, I talked about Lexi Howard and said that, like Rue, she is also a self-insert, and I still agree with that. But it has become abundantly clear lately that Sam is using Lexi to vent his frustrations out on his woke Gen Z audience. At times, it's like he wants to mock the purity culture surrounding our generation. But because Sam himself thinks of sex work as depraved and only a place where self-hating sluts with daddy issues thrive, it is no wonder viewers of the series seem to be taking away the message that sex work is inherently bad, and that you should, as Swerve loves to say, support the sex worker but not the work. I received many comments about Lexi vids saying that if I disliked Lexi, it's because I'm a degenerate. There was someone in the thread slut-shaming the actress who plays Faye, named Chloe Cherry, who used to do porn. I don't think the satire is going over people's heads because many Euphoria fans take the messages Sam has written at face value, and Sam is not good at writing commentary. Euphoria defenders love defending every baffling writing decision by saying it's commentary, as if commentary can't be critiqued. Sam Levinson is not good at writing commentary because he is an idiot who writes out of pure spite. He is so full of spite that it makes him stupid. He is so hateful towards his own audience for caring about these characters who they were invested in and who he ruined because he didn't care enough about them. It's funny how in a recent article Sam said that their motto on set was to evolve or die, and in that New York Times piece says viewers know when you aren't trying. He is absolutely right, because everyone can see how much of a downgrade season 3 has been thus far. But what does he mean by evolve or die? Does he think drastically changing the show's style and score was him evolving? Season 3, like The Idol, is just another expensive reminder of how much of a hack Sam Levinson is and has always been. He's a creepy, gross misogynist who has been given an unfairly large amount of creative freedom. He's been able to take ownership for the work of women and other marginalized creators with more talent than him. And even though his shows keep sucking literal ass, he continues to get work. Yes, that is unsurprising, and it is so incredibly upsetting whenever I think about how Amy Summett's was done, or even Andrea Arnold, who had the exact same thing happen to her with season 2 of Big Little Lies. I don't think it matters if Sam's shittiness is predictable. It is unfair how many opportunities this fucking weirdo has gotten. The only thing comforting me is how much Zendaya has no interest in promoting the series and appears to be done with Sam and all his shit. Maybe one day we will all be too.
This is horrifying, like a scary movie or something, like some nasty ass patriarchal bullshit. You know what? I gotta go apologize to some bitches. I'm forever changed after what I just seen.